So, what today is going to include, today we are going to just quickly just do a fund summary of what the fund is. I'm going to go through the application basically with you, through eligibility, the proposal, funding, project timelines, and the documents that you will need to upload as well. I'm going to show you an area where you might be able to get some help with quotes for different works. I'm going to very briefly go through some planning considerations. The reason I say briefly is I am not a planner. Okay, we have an entire planning team and that is not me. It's not my area of expertise. However, I'm going to try and provide as much information as possible. I'll also go through a few of the phase 1 successful projects. I'll show you where to apply, the form information, and also the next steps. So lots to go through, but my aim is that you also have a bit of time at the end to actually talk to me as well. As I mentioned, I have got you all on mute just so that we can work through this presentation and get all the information out there. However, along the way, if you've got anything to add, just write in the chat box, okay? Any questions that you come up with along the way as well, do just write them in the chat box, and what I'll do is I'll answer them all at the end as well. So just as a summary, the Rural England Prosperity Fund was announced in September 2022, and it was an addition to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which some of you might have heard of. Maidstone Borough Council were allocated £539,728 to spend between 2023 and 2025 on capital interventions in rural communities. That's a really important point, okay? All of this funding has to go to capital interventions, okay? So it can't go on training and things like that. It's actually got to go on physical stuff. There is £404,796 of this funding still to distribute. So we have actually got the majority of this funding still to distribute in this second phase. Last year, it was about, the last funding round we did, it was about 130,000, I think. So we're looking at 4 times the amount basically that we've got to distribute now in phase 2. The main aim of the fund is to support rural communities to modernise and improve their assets, provide multi-use spaces, improve health and well-being, and reduce rural loneliness. Projects should, and I would say really must, do one of the following: have a positive impact on the local environment, contribute towards net zero, and support the local rural economy, promoting community cohesion. Now, all the information that I'm about to tell you is summarised very well on the Rural England Prosperity Fund guidance webpage. Like I say, when this presentation is sent out to you, that is a link that will take you straight there. But later on, I am actually going to show you where you can find the form and where you can find these pages as well. So eligibility is a really, really important thing because not everyone is eligible for this. So 3 of the main really things are to say is about where you're located, what your project is, and if you've received one of these 3 funding schemes before from DEFRA. So it's the Farming in Protected Landscapes Programme, the Farming Investment Fund, and the Platinum Jubilee Village Hall Improvement Grant Fund. If you have received any of them at any time, you are not eligible for this, okay? And that will be the first question on the form, and you'll simply say, no, I have not received any of these. And then it will allow you to carry on with the form. If you have, you will not be able to carry on. The next most important thing is where you're located, okay? So projects are only eligible if they are in a rural area. However, this is down to DEFRA to classify what is called a rural area, okay? So this is where the complication comes, because there are areas that we would potentially consider rural or not rural, which DEFRA, under their definition and under their guidelines, are classifying slightly differently. So rural areas are classed as towns, villages and hamlets with populations below 10,000, or market or hub towns with populations of up to 30,000 that serve their surrounding rural areas as centres of employment and in providing services. Now, that's a very broad definition. In actual fact, the main way that you're going to be able to determine whether your project is in a rural area is using DEFRA's magic map. Now, it was actually not working a minute ago, but thankfully DEFRA have magically done something and it's now working. Can you see a map? Fantastic. So this is DEFRA's magic map application. This is basically what is going to help you and tell you whether you are eligible. Now, what you will first need to do is you will need to go on to Administrative Geographies. You will need to expand that, and then you will need to go on Other Administrative Boundaries. And when you go down here, you will see there's Rural England Prosperity Fund. You need to click that. Once you have clicked that, hopefully There you go. Lots of lovely red squiggly lines will appear on the map, and that is classifying which areas are rural and which are not. Now, for ease, what I've done is I'm going to show you how you just put a postcode in the top. So I found a postcode of one of the previous projects that I put in up here. All you would do is put your postcode in and then you would click search. And what will happen is it will actually zoom down into, hopefully, is it going to work? Are you going to search? If it doesn't, I'm going to have to do it manually. Okay, it's not doing it. So it should do that. You should be able to type the postcode in. However, I'm having to zoom in manually. So this is the alternative, okay? You can zoom in manually and actually find the area. Now, what you will then do is when you get down to Maidstone is you will see there's red lines kind of everywhere. Now, one thing I want to say is that with the red lines, there are red lines which show boundaries of districts, and then there are red lines which determine whether you are in or outside a rural area. The easiest way to determine if you are in a rural area or not is go to the exact building, the exact location of where you are, and then click on this I button right at the top, which says identify. Click on that button and then click on the exact building. Say we're down here in Cox Heath. If you click on there, a box will come up, and give it a second, and in that box it will say whether it is a rural area for the purposes of REPF, or if I click inside here instead, so literally just inside, you will see that it says not a rural area for the purposes of REPF. So that is the easiest way to find out if you are eligible or not. One thing I am going to say is if you are very, very much on the cusp, and we had some projects in the first round that were in this situation where they say had their village hall, but then they had their grounds, which were considered rural, but their actual building was not considered rural, do still come to us and have that conversation. Okay, so if you are not sure and if you're on the cusp, then please let me know. In the presentation here, I have included just a screenshot to show you exactly where the Rural England Prosperity Fund button is. So hopefully you can use that to actually navigate it yourself. But just remember that I button at the top. That is really what's going to help you in terms of where you're located. So as long as you're in a rural area, then you're okay to go. And then it's down to your project. So funding is only available for projects that meet the REPF objectives in Maidstone. So these were actually set by Maidstone Borough Council, and all projects must demonstrate how they have a positive impact on the local environment and contribute towards net zero, like I said. So objectives may be to increase resilience in infrastructure, pride in place, strengthen community ties, protection of local biodiversity, reduction in carbon emissions, increase energy efficiency and reduce utility bills, protect businesses and the community from natural hazards, improve perception of facilities, increase use of facilities, and create a multi-use space. So there's lots of different ones that hopefully you could somehow navigate around and think of a project that ties in. And then just to go through who we will actually fund as well. We will fund you if you have a leasehold interest in the site or building, okay? But we will need evidence that a copy of your tenancy or leasehold agreement to show that it is yours. B, we will need a letter or an email from the freeholder to confirm that your works are allowed to go ahead. Okay, and we will need to see evidence of that as well. So you've got to indicate whether you have a freehold or a leasehold interest for your group or organisation, and then provide evidence of this. So last time I think we did have one leaseholder who also had to include a letter from the freeholder saying, yes, we are okay for this project to go ahead. We can only offer grants to properly constituted charitable, social enterprise, community and voluntary organisations. Now I say that, but what you'll notice on the list, even though we've got things like registered charities, parish councils, CIOs, CICs, BENCOMs, constituted community groups and faith groups, at the bottom there, it does say small groups with no formal constitution. So non-constituted groups might be considered on a case-by-case basis. The reason that we don't always necessarily consider is purely because of the setup of these organisations sometimes just don't have the resource to actually put something like this into fruition. So if you are a small group with no formal constitution, it's probably best to get in contact with us first, I would say, before putting an application in. But I'm sure most of you on this call will fall into one of these categories. So coming to the form, after you've done all that eligibility, you will then be able to start filling in the form. So you will need to name a project. You will need to put the name of your organisation and group applying for the fund. You will then need to put the address and postcode of your organisation or group and where it is registered. Okay, so that's the first address that you need to put, where your organisation is registered. So say you're a charity that is registered at an office somewhere. However, that is not the building that you would like to do works on. The second address, you will then need to actually put the address of that second place where you actually want to do the work. So the site building address, if it is different. For organisations like parish councils, this is normally going to be the same because parish councils are normally registered to the village hall, for example, or something like that, but not always. Sometimes they're not. Okay, so just think about making sure that you've got both of those addresses. We then need two people's contact details who are from the listed organisation or group. We need a primary contact, but we also need a secondary contact just so that we can always get in contact with you. Obviously, that primary contact is the one that we will probably liaise with the most, but I expect that second contact will be copied into most emails. You then move on to your proposal. So this is essentially what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and including some dates as well. Good things to think about including as part of your summary is telling us a little bit about your organisation. So what services you currently offer the community and how you operate as an organisation. Describe your project to us kind of as briefly as possible, although it's going to be hard because for this section, I think it's only 500 words that you have. So what you're going to buy with the grant and what it will enable you as an organisation to do differently. Why you've decided to do the project and are there any reasons your organisation has not completed the project before now? To be honest, for most, it's going to be funding. They haven't had the funding until now, so that's absolutely fine. Please feel free to write that. And if there are any additional services or opportunities the project will allow your organisation or group to provide the local community. Now, just an example of that final one, this could be as simple as, say you are looking to get solar panels on a building through this project, then what that can do is that will reduce your energy bills, which means that you will have more disposable income to potentially support other work that your organisation does. So that is a good way of looking at maybe the opportunities that your project might allow your organisation to actually do. So think kind of outside the box a little bit, maybe not directly, but indirectly actually as well. Say, I don't know, you're going to improve the insulation or change your single glazed windows and doors to double glazed windows and doors, which makes space much warmer. It might allow you to use the hall much more in winter, whereas before you weren't allowed to use, or you weren't able to use that space in winter as much because it was far too cold. So just thinking about maybe how this fund will actually help the local community. So your proposal questions go on a little bit further. So these will all be individual questions. The funding is only going to be for capital spends, like I said earlier. So we do need to just know what resources you have in place to ensure the project is delivered. Okay, so just very, very simply, your staff and your capacity to be able to manage and actually deliver this project. So ensuring that you do actually have some staff and, like I said, the capacity to manage. This is where we sometimes go with non-corporated groups maybe don't have that capacity. So we just need to make sure that you are able to actually run this because we aren't going to be doing that. We're going to be giving you the funding and then handing it over. We want you to try and identify the estimated impact of your proposal by what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to mark specific boxes. So there'll be a list of boxes. So it might be things like reduce energy bills. It might be increase usage of facility, save money, things like that. So you'll be able to tick the boxes and then we want you to just expand on that a little bit more further down. And when we say provide supporting evidence, what we basically mean is you saying, okay, we're going to reduce our energy bills. We will provide evidence by showing you our energy bills before the installation of whatever it is that you're installing on the facility, and then showing you the energy bills afterwards as well. So it doesn't, we don't expect you to go and do some huge study or anything like that. Okay, we just need to know really core how maybe this proposal is going to impact you as an organisation and the community. The next question, again, will be a simple tick box exercise. It's what work you require to be funded. So there's going to be a big list of different works that can be funded, but there is an other box, so you can add something to that. And then The next question will be whether you have engaged with or had input from residents or those that use the facilities in the creation and development of the proposal. Now, again, we don't expect you to have gone out and do an absolute mass survey of the entire village, for example, or something like that. However, what it would be great is if you have had those conversations with potentially a few common groups that use the facility or regular people that use the facility and say, this is what we're proposing, what do you think? And then you've just got a little bit of information just to say to us, we've spoken to the community and they actually think this is a really good idea. They think this is going to be really beneficial for X, Y, and Z. It's something like that. We're not expecting, like I say, a whole sheet of study of this, okay? It's just, this is just very, very kind of brief. Yes, we've engaged with the people. This is basically what they've, here's a summary of what they've said. More questions in your proposal section. If you're aware of any similar projects, businesses or equipment already in the area, maybe if there's a similar project in the area. This one, to be fair, this shouldn't really have any reason to change our reasoning behind your project, purely because the kind of projects that you're going for here, it's unlikely that the fact that there'll be a similar project in the area is going to affect us funding what you're doing, because it's not, you're not building an entire new kind of facility or organisation. You're adapting what you've got to make it better. So just kind of a little comment there. Once completed, who's going to have use to it? Obviously, the grants here should benefit residents in Maidstone. You are all hopefully in the borough of Maidstone, therefore your facilities are. And so we just want to know who specifically this will benefit. So maybe areas, what area your facility is in, so what area it'll reach, maybe age range, age groups, and maybe even specific groups that use your facility and things like that, or the specific groups your organisation targets as well. So maybe for a sports group, for example, you can highlight to us, okay, this is who this is going to benefit. How you're going to monitor and assess the impact of your proposal. So like I mentioned just a minute ago, this would be any details of any performance targets and indicators and the proposed methodologies. Like I said, this could be as simple as your energy bill usage before and after. It could be something like the number of users or the number of groups that can use your facility before and after the project. If you have gone as far as measuring your carbon emissions, you could do something like your carbon emissions before and after the project. And what facilities does your current community asset offer? So what does that asset offer? Is it a sports club that offers obviously a base for that sports organisation? Is it a parish hall, a village hall that offers a facility for all sorts of different groups? And you can kind of maybe just give us a couple of examples of groups that the village hall is home to. You'll then move on to the funding section. And first of all, we will want you to tell us how much you apply for. So grants of up to £50,000, okay, are up for grabs. However, we may actually fund grants that are slightly more than £50,000 if we think there is reason to. And in phase two of the grants that we gave were slightly above £50,000 just to enable the projects to go ahead. So if you think your project is just over, if you give a good reason why, then that's okay. Okay, but we just need to know why. But generally, the ceiling is going to be £50,000. We just want you to state the total sum you're applying for and then itemise the expected costs of each element. So breaking them down if there are multiple interventions. So in this example, I've said this application is for £50,000 to insulate our village hall's roof and install solar panels with battery storage. The insulation will be £7,000, the solar panels will be £38,000 and the battery storage will be £5,000. The costs are based on recently received quotes. So what we will need you to then do is actually tell us where you have got this information for. I am going to go on to quotes in just a minute, okay? I'm just going to ignore the rest of that for a minute because we're going to go on to quotes in a minute. We then need to know from you if this funding will be in addition to any existing funding, what funding is already in place. So if you've received any funding for this specific project from anywhere else, we just need to know, and include details of successful funding applications which you maybe haven't yet got the money for, but are going to go towards this project as well, just so we have an idea of the funding going towards this specific project. We then need to know if you've completed any feasibility work, business cases, or had contractor assessments. And then we need you to summarise these and attach the relevant documentation. So this might be that you've had a feasibility study on your village hall, you've had people come in and actually assess your facility, your building, which have been, and these have all been conducted for your community asset already, or you might have got quotes already received for the items that you are looking to install. For any planned works, we do require 3 quotes. Now I'm going to go on more about that in a second. You must include at least 1 quote for any planned works with your initial application. So for any planned works, we need at least 1 quote initially in this application that you're going to be putting in. However, we do ultimately need 3, but like I said, I'll go on to that in a second. We then also need a project timeline. So what are the estimated timescales for the delivery and what is this based upon? So maybe tell us when you're looking to plan to start and complete your project, because we cannot fund anything that has already been purchased. It's all got to be things that are coming. We then want you to indicate what your estimated timescales for delivery are based upon, and the best way of doing this is uploading a proposed project timeline at the end of your application. Now, big caveat here, we know that you don't know our timeline specifically, and we don't necessarily know our timeline very specifically down to a T. And there are going to be things that come into play that mean your timeline is going to change. That's okay. We just need to get an idea of how long you're looking at this project taking, broadly speaking, okay? And you're going to also want to consider planning your timeline. Now, this is a good example of how to do a project timeline. Okay, so all you do in Excel is you basically make a file. Along the top, you put the dates, each weekly date, and along the left, you would actually put what's happening. And then you block out in colours under the dates the activities that are happening. What we would encourage you to consider is that you will need a grant agreement signed before, okay, and I'm going to go more into timelines a little bit later. You will need to have received the funding. There may be some planning things, so pre-planning application advice, for example, or a whole planning application that might have to go in. You're going to have to place order with suppliers, and they're going to have a supplier lead time. There is going to be an installation of different components that may take time, and obviously contingencies as well. Okay, so like I say, we don't expect you to stick dead on to this because we know things will change. However, it's good for us to get an idea of what you're thinking in terms of timelines. I am noticing that you've got questions in the chat, by the way. One I'm just going to pick up on here. Is there any end time limit for completion of the project? Yes. Okay, and that will be March 2025. Okay, so you will ultimately have a year for the project to complete. That's about how long you will have, maybe just under, in terms of when the funding comes through to us and gets out to you. We're hoping it'll be about April, but again, I can't promise that just yet, but it does need to be done by the end of March 2025 for this funding round. So you will ultimately have a year. Now, when it comes to the end of the form, you will then have the opportunity to upload documents. This is where we will need you to upload your evidence of your freehold or lease interest. So whether it's a copy of your tenancy or leasehold agreement and a letter of it, or whether it's, for example, a deed for your freehold interest. We will want you to put a proposed project timeline on. And then, like I said, we want you to do any quotes for any planned works. So we require 3 quotes for all the planned works, and 1 quote must be included in this initial application. So what we mean by this is, say the example I used earlier, that there was a project that was going to do some roof insulation, solar panels and battery storage. It means that you as an organisation have gone out and tried to get 3 quotes for roof insulation and 3 quotes for solar panels and battery storage, because they'll probably come together. And you have received a quote back for one of them from a supplier for those, and you attach that. If you have received more, that's fantastic. Attach those as well. Okay, so we want you to kind of attach as many quotes as you can, up to 3 quotes. But we do understand this is hard. Okay, which is why we are asking for you to just at least include 1. And then what we will ask you to do is just let us know earlier on where you have put what you are basing all your funding on. We'd just like you to state, we have requested other quotes from X, Y, and Z company. we haven't received them, or say if you've received some sort of contact, say I received this contact and we are hoping for quotes in a month's time or something like that, just so that we know you are aware that you need to get those 3 quotes. And that is really just good practice. It's not only good for us, but it's also good for you to go out there and get 3 quotes to get an idea of actually what you're spending on this. And it kind of aligns very much with our procurement policies as well, particularly for these bigger spends. Now, there is going to be a little bit of help with your quotes as well. So we have created a sustainable business directory. On this page, there is a big paragraph there that is basically saying that our sustainable business directory is a platform to highlight environmentally conscious businesses in the community. However, we cannot guarantee, as Maidstone Borough Council, the reliability, quality of the products and services. Okay, this is a directory simply stating organisations that might be able to help you. However, we are not endorsing these organisations. So I'm just going to show you where you can find it. This one. So the Sustainable Business Directory, those can be found on, hopefully you can all see this, can be found on our climate change website, which is simply climatechange.maidstone.gov.uk. You go onto this website and you're presented with a screen like this. What you then need to go on is what can I do? When you click on what can I do, you will then take into another screen where you'll find the Sustainable Business Directory. Again, please do read the caveat at the top. Again, it's saying exactly what the presentation says about us not being able to endorse these organisations. But what you'll do as you scroll down is you will find, for example, renewable energy businesses, a list of them, heating businesses, insulation organisations, heating energy bills advice, window and door organisations, and training advice. These are all local organisations to Maidstone. That's something we should emphasise here, which is why we first started and created this Sustainable Business Directory. So that's just a little bit of help with quotes. Planning considerations. Now, like I said, I am not a planner, okay? These are considerations I've been passed on by our planning team. However, I am not an expert in this area, but I will pass on the information I know and share with you the resources that I can pass on to you to go and investigate further. So depending on the nature of the proposal, planning permission or prior notification may be required. This should always be factored into the project costs and the project timescales for implementation. So projects may not require planning permission, but may still require a prior notification or what's called a permitted development application, which is similar but simpler than planning permission. Okay, I always thought for the prior notification and permitted development, you didn't have to go through the whole planning process, but you do still have to go through the planning portal and actually put forms in. It's just not as in-depth and not as detailed as a whole planning proposal. Now, the team responsible for the Rural England Prosperity Fund allocations, we cannot advise on planning permissions and timeframes. That, like I said, is an entirely different team, but you can get more information on the planning portal. Again, there is a link here. The planning portal is, I'm again going to show you it because it is very, very helpful. Right. Hopefully you can all see this. So this is the planning portal, and this will take you to the applications page. However, the best thing to go on is, do you need permission? And what you can then do is you can have a look at common projects. Okay, and here you can look at all of these sorts of different common projects and you can click on them. Say solar panels. I've just clicked on the domestic one. I've realized I should have clicked on the non-domestic one, but you will then be able to get a little bit of information about this. So I really recommend visiting this website. When it comes to planning considerations, our planning team have just provided me some information for possibly some of the most common projects for this particular fund. So this is an overview, but it needs to be remembered that every single site is different, and before commencing any works, you'll need to be satisfied the correct consents are in place. One thing I really want to emphasise is whether your buildings are in conservation areas, for example. Some of this information may be different if you're on conservation area, because it's going to be a lot stricter. So just be aware of that. Generally, internal works, so for example, if you're having roof or cavity wall insulation, they should not require planning permission unless the building is a listed building or if you're in a conservation area. If you're making any external changes to a building, so for example, to the windows and doors as an external insulation, any proposal that's going to change the external appearance of your building are probably going to need planning permission. Solar panels, ground source heat pumps and water source heat pumps, they fall into a slightly different category under the Town and Country Planning Order 2015, and that actually allows for works without the need for planning permission, subject to meeting certain criteria though. If the criteria are not met, planning permission would be required. And with solar panel proposals, if the criteria is met, the proposal is still likely to require a prior notification application. So essentially what I'm trying to say is with all of these projects, it is likely that you are probably going to have to look at some aspect of planning. Air source heat pumps and wind turbines. I don't know which of you are going to try and fund a wind turbine with the money that we've got, but there we go. No permitted development rights exist for these on non-domestic premises, and as such, any proposal for an air source heat pump or wind turbine will need planning permission. EV chargers, very similar to solar panels, are different than a lot of the other external stuff, and you can install EV chargers without the need for planning permission, subject again to meeting the criteria. And the Town and Country Planning Order 2015 also allows for development by local authorities, which does include parish councils, to install EV chargers. Okay, so you might be a bit better with EV chargers. There's a little bit more leniency for parish councils. Now, one thing to say is that you can get pre-application advice from the Maidstone Borough Council planning team, and you may wish to seek pre-planning application advice from the planning department, and the details for this, including the fees and timescales, can be found here. One thing that we did last year is we did not expect the projects that put in applications to have gone through this process already. Okay, we do not expect you to do this in the next 6-7 weeks, okay, especially over Christmas. Most of the projects that came in last year had not gone through the planning considerations. We then took them to a panel. After that, they then went and got pre-application planning advice, okay, which is exactly what we would probably encourage you to do this time, because obviously you don't want to go and do that until you know you're going to be getting funding. Last year, we did manage to discount the pre-application advice as well. So there is a fee for that advice. However, we managed to get it discounted, and we are trying to do that again this year, but I cannot completely confirm that or confirm the discount on it at the minute, but fingers crossed we will be able to discount that pre-application advice. That is just the initial advice, okay? That is not the planning application itself. The planning application itself, all of the fees for that is actually set by national government, so we cannot change that at all. So that is just a standalone fee. Now, on average, with the pre-application advice, a written response will be provided within 15 working days of submission. However, if you want to have a meeting, which you can have, and you can have it on site, it does cost more, it would take longer. There is also the possibility to request specialist input from the conservation tree or landscape officer, should there be constraints associated with the site. And the more information provided with the inquiry, the more informed response you are going to get. So when you do it, if you get to the point where you're doing a pre-application advice, I would really, really encourage you to give them as much information as possible so that they can help you and let you know where to go next with the planning process. If you then do have to go and apply for planning, they are best submitted through the planning portal, which I showed you. An application would be subject to validation requirements, and there is actually a validation checklist on Maidstone Borough Council's website, and there is a link to that here. This would include, but not be limited to, a scaled site location plan, scaled existing and proposed floor plans and elevations, and like I say, a full list can be found here. Now, although I'm putting this in, I want to emphasise you do not have to have done any of this to apply for the fund at this stage, okay? So please do not let this put you off applying, okay? You do not have to have any of this information prior to applying to the fund. This will all be steps taken afterwards, and you will have the time to do that. You can find details of the fees found on the planning portal or Maidstone Borough Council website, and the planning team did inform me they are actually changing today. That's today, isn't it? They're changing today. So hopefully from tomorrow you'll have the updated ones. The target timescale for determining a planning application is 8 weeks from submission, and the prior notification procedure has a fixed timescale of 56 days for determination. Now, This obviously is down to your specific application. Prior notification procedure, you will get a response within 56 days. However, planning application is going to be down to a few things, and that also includes whether it's a major development. It's very unlikely any of yours are going to be a major development, because major developments, we're talking about building, you know, multiple houses or something like that, which you're not going to be doing with this funding. So I would say you're looking at about 8 weeks. So just to go through a few of the phase 1 successful projects. So Staplehurst Free Church were awarded £45,000, and they applied for funding to install solar panels to produce sustainable energy. The panels will help them to reduce the cost of electricity in the long term, and by spending less on bills, they are going to be able to expand and support more residents in the future. So they are going for solar panels and batteries. As you can see, they've got quite a new centre already, so they didn't need to upgrade or change anything. So it was just the solar panels they were going for, and then the battery storage with that as well. So that's just an example of, I guess, a relatively simple but quite expensive project. Teeston Parish Council, they were also awarded £45,000. However, their project's a little bit different. They want to reduce their main grid electricity usage by upgrading to a low carbon heat source, and they will also funding will also reduce their annual energy costs and provide a source of sustainable energy. So they're also going for solar panels with battery storage. However, they're also going to go for 2 air-to-air heat pumps. Now, I want you to know, heat pumps are not as scary as they sound, okay? And with this funding, you will be able to install heat pumps. However, we really, really do encourage a fabric first approach. And what this means is that we encourage you to make sure that your facility is, first of all, well insulated before looking to install something like a heat pump, purely because a heat pump is going to be very inefficient if your building is very leaky. Okay, so I would encourage you, if you're in a situation where you've got a very, very old facility that you use a lot of energy in, to think about the insulation first of all, rather than looking straight at the big shiny things like heat pumps. Teeston, on the back of this, what they're actually doing is they are blocking up 4 old windows and a door, which they don't use. They don't need the windows. They have plenty of light, and what that is going to do is directly block up and actually prevent drafts in those areas as well. So they're doing a little bit extra too. We have 2 projects more that we have funded, and we have part funded them in phase 1 and part funded them in phase 2. So we didn't, like I say, have enough funding in phase 1 to support as many projects as we wanted to, which is why we're really encouraging, if any of you were phase 1 applicants and you didn't get money last year, we're really encouraging you to apply this year, because like I said, we have 3, nearly 4 times the amount of money. But there are 2 that are getting a little bit of that funding to carry on their projects. So Hollandbourne Parish Council have Cardwell Pavilion, and they're looking to update it to allow villagers and community groups to use the facility safely. The project will see a reduction in utility bills and improvement in energy efficiency. The carbon footprint of the building is also going to be reduced. So they're going to have a low carbon air to water heat pump, a new kitchen. They're going to modernise their toilet facilities and put in a disabled toilet. So this is where I want to say is, although a lot of the projects I've talked about are obviously very, very focused on net zero and greening your facilities, we still are obviously open to projects where, for example, you are modernising your assets and making them more usable for your users. That's what we want as well. And I mean, I haven't put the photo on here, but Cardwell Pavilion, their disabled toilet, or their toilet, I would say at the minute, is so old. And so being able to fund something like this, and they're actually just rejigging and reconstructing their whole area a little bit as well. But they have combined it with a project that is also going to actually reduce the energy usage of the building as well. So that's a good thing to do as well. Maybe look at kind of combining kind of a couple of projects together, and they're going to do that, like I say, with phase 1 and phase 2 funding. The final project is Boxley Parish Council, who again have a little bit of funding in the first phase and a bigger chunk in the second phase. The community hall is going to be updated to improve energy efficiency and reduce utility bills. So they are basically changing all of their doors and windows. So they've got very inefficient doors and windows, so they are upgrading all of these. But the other thing they are also going to do is be looking to put in 2 EV charging points, which are going to be able to be used by the community on a 24-hour basis. Not only that, but also generate a small income, obviously, for Boxley Parish Council too. So to do that, they have got to reconfigure their entrance to their car park. And so the funding is also going to change in where their entrance is to the car park and move in and putting a new gate in and things like that. So that's kind of a slightly different project, but yeah, EV chargers are something we're looking to support as well. So when we're looking at where to apply, I have done some very basic screenshots. Right, I'm hoping you can all see this. So this is the Maidstone Borough Council main website. You are going to scroll down, and as it does show in the screenshots on the presentation, you're going to click on Community. My internet's being very slow. When you click on Community, it will then take you to another page, which you need to scroll down and find where it says Shared Prosperity Fund. Okay, although this is the Rural England Prosperity Fund, it is part of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. So we then click on that. And although the top information looks like it's nothing to do with this, okay, it's just generally about the UK SPF. If you keep scrolling down, you're going to find the Rural England Prosperity Fund information. Now, I just want to draw your attention to two things. The first one is here, the Rural England Prosperity Fund guidance document. So you can click on that and that will take you somewhere. And then down at the bottom is where you apply. So you'd click that button and that is basically where you then actually apply for your funding right here. Okay, so the guidance document, just to show you quickly as well while I'm on this page, if it loads, includes all the information that I have highlighted in this presentation. So here we go, we've got ROPF guidance, and then down here you can see you've got the eligibility, applicant details, proposal, funding, documents, successful projects, and the next steps. So where to apply, the ROPF guidance and things like that. Now the form information. So with the form, it only allows you, and this is all because of digital reasons, okay, I'm really sorry, we cannot change this, only allows you 60 minutes to complete the form, and you cannot save the form and return to it later. If you close it at any point, your changes are not saved and you'll have to start your application again. So the best advice is to go through the guidance document or go through the questions that I have raised on this presentation, but the guidance document on the Maidstone Borough Council website, each bold sentence is a question, basically. So just go through and get all of the answers to those questions and essentially just copy and paste across. That's going to be the easiest thing. So pull all that information together before you even start the form and make sure you've got your documents as well. There are word limits on some questions. The bigger, chunkier questions, such as your proposal, that's going to be 500 words. The smaller questions are going to be 250 words. Okay. You can attach everything. So all your uploads. So the quotes, whether you're a leaseholder or freeholder, and the evidence for that, and your project timeline, all of that is attached at the end. So the final page. So you don't attach it as you go along, you do it at the end. And there is a list of the accepted file types there, but that list again is available on the website. The next steps, so applications are now open and they're going to be closing on Monday the 22nd of January at 11:59. Okay, so on the Tuesday at midnight 01, they're going to be shut. So please try and get them in then. Please contact us, okay? I am mainly kind of monitoring this inbox, and we are here to help you. We want to give this funding out. We want to help and support organisations to get this funding and improve their community assets. So please email ruralfund@maidstone.gov.uk if you have any questions. In terms of our timeline, we're going to aim to let applicants know if they are progressing to the next stage of the application process by the end of February. Okay, what we will do is we will get the applications in. We will go through them all, file them all, and then we will have a funding panel. After the panel, we will have our shortlist, which we will then let you know about, and that will hopefully be by the end of February. This is obviously subject to change depending on the volume of applicants and things like that, but fingers crossed we're going to be all up to scratch with our timeline. That's the end of that presentation. Sorry, I know it's very, very quick. However, I just wanted to try and get all that information in, and I have still got 10 minutes. What I'm going to do is just quickly scroll through and have a look at your questions. So if you have a freehold premises, but it is unregistered land, what evidence is needed to satisfy the requirements? Alan, I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. Yep, I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. But I've got your email address, so what I'll do is I'll email you You mentioned this is second phase of the scheme. Is this also the final phase of this scheme as far as NBC knows? Yes, it is. Okay. This is the second phase of the Rural England Prosperity Fund, and this is the final lot of funding we have got from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Most of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund money ends at the, like I say, March 2025. So it is, at the minute, we haven't had any more announcements from government. We haven't applied for any more pots of money because there aren't any. If they do come in the future, it'd be great if we could do more projects like this. But at the minute, this is the last one. Jane, you've said for the green element of the funds, is there any point in applying if all that is practical for us to install is insulation? We are not in a position to install, etc., etc. That's absolutely fine. No. Okay, so things like insulation, like I said, we want you to do a fabric first approach. So things like insulation and if you're, for example, we've had someone contact me fairly recently and said our roof is broken, and I said, okay, well, how about thinking about fixing the roof, but while you're fixing the roof, also do top up and make sure you've got the best insulation you can have in the roof as part of this application. And yes, absolutely, changing windows, doors, like you saw in one of those projects, Boxley, their main, although they are doing EV chargers as well, they mainly are doing windows and doors and things. Okay. What I would say is that the panel do like ambitious projects. However, obviously there's a limit to the funding. Okay, so it might actually cost the full funding for you to fully insulate your building and change all the windows and doors. That actually might cost the £50,000. So we are totally aware of that, and absolutely not, no, you do not have to do all of the slightly, I guess, more glamorous things like the solar panels and the heat pumps at all. You can just look at those insulation measures because they are just as important in terms of reducing energy usage. Is there any end limit for completion of projects? I mentioned that, so March 2025. If a project's in its early stages and have not yet sought quotes, will there be further phases so we can apply when we have more information? No. However, I would still encourage you to try and apply in this round. Okay, so like I said, for your project, all you need is one quote for each element of the fund. So this could be an email back from a supplier saying this will cost X amount, and then all you need to say is we will then search for more quotes and just search for them. We found last time that people were sending out lots of emails to loads of suppliers, and suppliers were saying either not getting back to them because they were so busy, or were saying, you know, we don't want to give you the quote because you're kind of applying for funding or something like that. So I would say to get these quotes, maybe say, this is the project we're looking at, approximately how much would it cost? So that we know. Maybe if you mention the kind of funding side of things is when it kind of puts companies off. But I would still encourage you, if you can, try and get one quote for the elements of works that you want done in the next kind of 6-7 weeks to try and do it, because no, at the minute we don't have any more money coming. Once submitted, how long to determine the success of proposals? I was just concerned with 8 weeks plan approval, getting orders placed and work schedule, the timelines. No, we completely understand, which is why we want to speed it up so much. The first phase of funding took us a lot longer than we wanted to, and we have really streamlined this down. So we are hoping that you will be getting the funds by early April, basically. If not earlier than that. In terms of finding out things like that and going for planning approval and things, obviously you can hopefully go for that as soon as you have got your funding agreement completed and signed. So just to let you know, if you are successful, we will send you out a legally binding funding document, which obviously you have every right to add things to, as well as we do. And after that point, most applicants seem to be happy to go for that planning information. However, you can kick off those stages maybe even earlier than that with the pre-planning advice straight away as soon as you found out from us that we're rewarding you money. So there are little things that you can maybe do earlier on. And like I say, last year was a phase 1 of this project. We learned a lot. So this year, really hoping it's going to run a lot more smoothly. What I'm going to do is quickly, how long do we have? Yeah, I'm going to quickly unmute you all, or allow you to unmute yourselves. And then what that will allow you to do is, if any of you have a question, just to kind of allow mic attendees. Yes. I can hear someone. I've just had one more question come in as well. I've just seen that it says who is on the panel. So there will be a couple of elected members on the panel. We have not finalised the panel yet, as well as Maidstone Borough Council officers. And also we are potentially looking in to get someone from Mid Kent College who have a great department all on kind of net zero and things like that and have a lot of expertise. But then we will also have people like myself and the planning department who are there basically as expert advisors, I guess. So we're not the ones that ultimately make decisions, but hopefully we can kind of pass on as much information and knowledge as we have. But like I say, I don't know exactly who's on the panel just yet. Does anyone have any other questions? No, that's quite impressive. Okay, so I think the one question that I couldn't answer, and I am really, really sorry, Derek, but oh no, was it Derek?
No,
was it?
not me.
Alan. It was Alan that I couldn't answer the question. Alan, I will email you because I had this question last year and I have got the answer somewhere in an email. So I will be able to get back to you. Like I say, so this has all been recorded. I'm going to get our comms team to actually edit it and make it into a video that I can then actually put up and share with you all. But what I will also do, because I have got all your email addresses, I will email you a PDF of all the slides, which has got all of the links to everything that we have talked about in this. But I am obviously at the end of an email as well. Okay, so just email ruralfund@maidstone.gov.uk and I am there to answer your questions. Okay, like I say, we want to help you with this fund. One thing I would say, between Christmas and New Year, there won't be anyone answering questions, but any other time, please do email and we are there to try and help you with this fund as well. And like I say, we just want to support you. So hopefully that has been really, really helpful for you all. Thank you so much for joining and taking the time on a Wednesday evening to come and listen to this. And fingers crossed, we're going to get some great projects coming in. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Brilliant.
you very much.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Gemma.
That's
Thank
all right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.